Welcome to Adeptus On-Air, the show where we examine how individuals and companies make decisions that drive their business and personal success. Each week, we connect with notable professionals who pull back the curtain on the industries that Adeptus has been on the cutting edge of for the last 30 years, including music, sports, and entertainment, as well as new emerging markets.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Adeptus On-Air. I am again your host, Mike Hoffman. And today I am joined by the founder of Pretty Loaded, Beth Warford. Beth, how are you today?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you, Mike?
Good, good. Appreciate having you on. As I was saying to you earlier, you are the first person I've ever spoken to or met, for that matter, from North Dakota. So this is exciting for me.
Yes. Well, there aren't a lot of us here in North Dakota, but they're very good people.
It's funny, though, when I do think about North Dakota, I do think about like the bears that are in the picture right behind you. That's how I envision North Dakota. Like you're walking down the street and you see one of those bears. And I'm sure I'm very wrong, but that's just kind of over the years what I've built up in my head.
Not too many bears here.
All right, good, good. So let me just tell everyone a little bit about yourself and the company. Then I would definitely want to talk to you about it. So Beth's the founder of Pretty Loaded and has trained thousands of people in person and through online training. She's responsible for starting the National Situation Awareness Day, and this was approved by the Registrar of the National Day Calendar. Beth's been featured on Consumer Reports, The List, Reddit, Elite Readers, BuzzFeed, Viral Nova, and many other networks as a personal safety expert. Her company, Pretty Loaded, has developed a practical, usable, no-nonsense, easy-to-learn, proactive personal safety training that uses situational awareness, body language, criminal tactics, and de-escalation techniques to prevent injury or harm. This program enhances employee security and reduces accidents and criminal incidents. She's worked with the U.S. court systems, hospitals, the airline industry, real estate schools, SiriusXM, Grubhub, security services, universities, Florida Game and Wildlife, sitting housing authorities, and more and more and more. Pretty good?
Excellent.
All right. Well, there's nothing else to talk about. I think we just covered everything. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Nick.
So I think it's awesome. And I've watched some of your videos, which we'll discuss in a little bit. But kind of just talk to me about how this all got started.
Well, it all got started in 2013. I was at a hockey event with my two oldest daughters, and I was almost assaulted. And so at the time, I just put my head down and held my daughter's hands, and I froze. I didn't know what to do. Fortunately, my brother came to my rescue. Mm-hmm. So that absolutely changed my life. Yeah. And I started to, look into, I had a lot of close calls, before that, where my intuition was just so high and it would go off, and it got me out of some situations. But when I had my daughters with me and they were crying, that changed me. I was crying all the way home. I called my husband and I said, I need to do something. He found Krav Maga, so I enrolled in a martial arts school, started taking that. And then I looked at self-defense and I found weapons, and then I found martial arts, but really nothing else. And so I started to study criminals. I started to look into research who criminals were. I stumbled upon situational awareness, just paying attention to your surroundings, being a hard target, all this preventative stuff that I had never learned. And I decided I'm going to start a company.
Mm-hmm. So it's one thing to start a company. That's great. Anyone can start a company. Easy.
Right.
But as you heard before, I mentioned a lot of companies that you've helped. So how do you go from I'm going to start a company to obviously making yourself an expert and a reliable resource for so many large companies?
Right, because I'm former ICU sedation nurse in children's hospitals. I had no history in law enforcement or military. Yeah. I literally had to read every single book out there. Not every single book, but I read everything. I'd wake up at 4 a.m. and I just knew that what I would develop would save people. So I started in Shields Sporting Goods store in the back of their conference room. I had people come in, sign up for my class. They started coming in and they loved it so much that eventually it got into corporations. And then all of a sudden I'm the keynote speaker for these large corporations. But what really propelled Pretty Loaded forward was developing videos. I wanted to develop videos that would show a bad situation and something go wrong, but not just have a fear factor. I wanted to show people what they can do so they're never in that situation. So it's very preventative, proactive training. And then the videos really propelled me to a whole new level. And then
the power of social media, right?
Yes, exactly. And YouTube. Yeah. So that really propelled me, out there. And then all these corporations, the world right now, safety training, unfortunately, personal safety training is really needed right now in every city, every large city, especially.
Yeah. So when you're dealing with the companies, we'll start with that first, because some of the videos I saw was more on the personal, but let's just get to the companies first. When you're talking to a group or you're a keynote speaker at a conference of one of theirs and so forth, are you speaking mostly about safety in the workplace, dealing with clientele, or are you also customizing it to how to protect yourselves outside of the work environment? Like, what's your central messages when you're talking to a large organization?
It's mostly so it depends on the client. We really customize it for the client. So Grubhub delivery partners, we make videos exactly for what they're having to deal with. Florida wildlife, those are lone workers. They're out on their own. They have to rely on themselves. What can they do? So it depends on our client. It's normally getting to and from your office, and that's the training. But we do teach de-escalation. So there is some stuff in your office. But right now we're getting into healthcare training. There's so much going on in these healthcare settings, where nurses and doctors and respiratory therapists are being assaulted by the patients. It's unbelievable. So we're developing training for that. Where is the safe room? How can you get out of that situation? What can you do in those different scenarios? So basically, we understand what our client needs, and then we customize that training for that corporation.
Yeah, you made a great point that I hadn't thought about that. So when you're talking about a Grubhub, those people aren't in your traditional office. Their office is their car and the walkway up to someone's door.
Right,
which is obviously a much more dangerous, setting. And I imagine like an Uber driver, their office is literally, they have random people coming into their back seats, and you never know when that person is going to come in.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's a very high risk. There's certain professions that are high risk, and you have to train them for what to do. We often train on intuition. Does something seem wrong? Pre-attack body indicators. You don't just have a person going from being relaxed with their arms crossed to all of a sudden assaulting you. We tell exactly what they do. They have to stare at their intended target first, whether it's your briefcase or your purse or you. They have to stare, and they stare for 3 seconds or longer, and they have to move towards you. And so we train on how to not, if you see that, cross the street, go into a store, if you're walking to or from work. Another thing is if you're all alone, if you're walking all alone, you're more of a target than when you're with someone. So when you're walking to work, you're walking in downtown Seattle and you're by yourself, you look at people and you notice other people that might be walking and say, hey, do you mind walking the next block with me?
Right.
A lot of the times they're like, absolutely, I will. And so there's just very small things that
it's to their benefit as well.
It is, exactly. Yeah. And so there's just very small things, being aware of your surroundings. You're not on your phone. Hard target instruction. Criminals go after weak, easy targets. And after you take our training, you will never be a weak, easy target again. They're going to find plenty of people on the street that are soft targets, but it's not going to be you after our training.
And I imagine while a lot of this is female focused, there's a lot of, I was going to say, I'm sure, right. That was part 2. I'm sure a lot of this content is very relevant for men as well.
Correct. Yes. I would say that we actually have more male, maybe like 60% male, 40% female, just because some of the industries that we train, they're more high risk for the men, like energy and oil and all that kind of thing. Yeah. And men, as men are assaulted and attacked too. So it pertains to both men and women. And then we also have courses for, college aged students and, travelers. Travel safety is huge because now you're in another country. Do you even know what their 911 is, or do you know where their hospitals are? Do you know if you can drink the water safely? So many simple things.
Yeah. And things about, being able to know that you can plug in your phone charger so you can reach out to someone because maybe they use a different, charging. So it's amazing. I know whenever I travel, I always Google those things just so I know I'm prepared when I get there. I need an
Right.
adapter. I need this. I need that, and so forth. It's crazy. So you mentioned college campuses and things like that. And obviously that's something, unfortunately, you kind of hear about a lot. And on one of my most recent podcasts, I had someone on. She was the creator. She was on Shark Tank, but the creator of Nightcap It.
Okay.
And it's basically the scrunchie that you pull out, you put it over your drink to protect someone from, roofing your drink or something like that. So
Right.
I imagine college campuses, the protection aspect adds a whole nother angle, because you're not only dealing with safety, but you're also dealing with alcohol consumption at the same time.
Right.
So what is your message there in terms of, if you were talking to a university, like if you were at a university speaking to a student body as a whole or an organization, what are your messages there? Some of the key things you'd want to get across?
Well, the messages are really, stick with your friends. I'm not going to tell people not to drink. It's not wise to drink, right? Because it impairs everything.
Mm-hmm.
But if you are drinking, you need to have two friends, and two, not just one, but two friends in your group that are going to stay sober the entire night. And they are going to watch the friends that might be drinking. They will never let their friend into another room, go off into another room with some guy. There's just small little tips like that. And it's not only for women. Guys are having bad things happening to them as well on campus. But it's about using your judgment. Don't go into stupid places and doing stupid things. Paying attention, maybe knowing how to fight if you had to. So some of the things that we do teach a few Krav Maga moves. If somebody does have you in a room, where can you strike somebody so you can get away? Right?
Mm-hmm.
There are targets on the body that you can strike just so you can get away. And a lot of this is mindset. What do you do if somebody tries to take you in a room or says certain things? We also teach about criminals and who they are. There's all sorts of things like red flags go off in your head. Like if someone wants to take you to a different location or go somewhere else, we talk about the red flags. Don't do those things.
It sounds like a lot of what you're talking about is just simply situational awareness. Because
Correct.
like you said, if you've almost role played or watched a role play, and I'm guessing this is where a lot of your videos come in hand, is if I'm put into a room and I have to think on my feet, oh my God, what do I do? As opposed to, oh yes, I remember, I saw this.
Yes.
It's just building up an arsenal. So whether it's a self-defense physical move,
Right.
a self-defense mental move, or just a way to get you out of that situation, the preparedness, I think, can go a long way.
Yeah, that's a great example, Mike, because honestly, most people freeze if they're never put in that situation. They completely freeze. But if they have the mindset, now they can come up with some stupid excuse that they forgot their phone, they have to get out of the room, they have to do something. It's all about your mental attitude and your mindset and remembering what to do in those situations versus freezing, because like 80% of people who take personal safety or self-defense training have already been attacked or robbed or assaulted.
Yeah.
So
they're doing it after the fact in response instead of a proactive approach beforehand.
right. And I
So
really
you're a great example of that.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
And you don't realize how terrible it is, and unfortunately for me, I was not assaulted, but I have met so many people that have been assaulted. I have had corporations call me because their music producer was followed home by a homeless person and was stabbed to death. 35-year-old. And, I look at the videos and I see her not shutting and it's not absolutely not her fault, but I see her not shutting the door to her apartment behind her, making sure it's locked. I think she had AirPods in so she couldn't hear him following her. And by the time the police got there, I believe it was an hour and 40 minutes later.
Yeah.
And so, I deal with that kind of stuff. And this training is so simple. It's so easy to use. You're going to remember it. It's going to save lives. I want training like this, just like you're healthy and to eat healthy and that sitting is the new smoking. People should know how to protect their lives because the average encounter is over in 9 seconds. And the police department is 10 to 15 minutes away if you're lucky. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's so many things that are just so easy that people could do this, and I'm an accountant, so everything's about numbers and statistics. I would think
Yeah,
probabilities of a problem would go down dramatically if people just did little things. And you kind of alluded to them before, closing your apartment door. I always, said to my kids, as soon as you get in your car door, before you turn on your car, lock your door.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh, that should be the first thing. Door closed, lock. And then, because what will happen is they'll get in their car and they want to either text someone before they start driving, which they should do, not
Yep.
when they're driving, or they want to call and say, I'm leaving, blah, blah, blah. But that first thing needs to be that door lock.
It does. And that's a good point. So many people forget to just simply lock their door.
And they don't have to lock it, because as soon as you turn your car on and you start driving, a lot of them lock automatically, but that's too late.
It is too late. It is. And so it's just simple things like that. Also, know where fringe areas are. Fringe areas are where most crime happens. In and out of your car is a huge fringe area. So, we just talk about, before you get out of your car, don't unlock it, right? Look around, look all around, look behind you, look to the sides. Is somebody just standing there that it doesn't look like they should belong there? We actually teach our students to profile. Profile not on race or gender or culture, how the person is acting.
Behavior.
Are they just hanging out? Who has time to just hang out on the streets and, hand out
So
pamphlets
behavior profiling, I guess, is probably the best way to put it.
Yes, behavior profiling, correct.
Yeah.
Right. And you can tell a lot from that. And so pick a different parking spot, but restrooms are fringe areas, walking paths, running paths. There's all sorts of areas that are fringe areas. So when you're in a fringe area, you need to kind of be alert and pay attention. And you're not paranoid. You don't think you're going to be attacked today or anything, but it could be just a car that comes flying off the street and goes into the crowd. But because you're aware, you're watching it and you can move,
Yeah. It's scary, because you hear about things on TV or you watch things on TV. And unfortunately now, if you put on the news, it's bad every night. That, I hate to say it, we've all kind of been desensitized a little bit. Like,
Right.
At least here, when I'm in New Jersey, I get New York news.
Okay.
New York news might be a little different than North Dakota news. I don't know. Hopefully it is.
Yeah. Yes,
but
it
my
is.
news starts off with, this happened in New York City. There was, a fire here, 11 killed. There was a murder here. There was an attack here. That's what every news starts. Before they even get to the political stuff or all that, it's always these bad things that have happened. But because you hear them every day,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, yeah, another one. And you don't think twice about it because, again, I am 40 miles away. So, you kind of become immune to it, unfortunately. So You probably don't think these things can ever happen to you. But again, how many times do you watch those shows, 48 Hours, which not like a Law and Order, which is fake, but like a 48 Hours, which is covering a real story. And what do you hear?
Right.
In this town, there was no crime.
Yep.
In this town, everyone loved everyone. In this town, everyone loved the person who did this, and so forth like that. So
yeah,
it can happen anywhere.
Right. And I really like to bring up the fact of opportunistic predators. They have done so many studies on and research on people and ask them, if you can get away with a crime and nobody would find out, would you do it? And 10 to 20% of people say they would absolutely do it. This includes, this is not necessarily murder, but this is some bad things. And so what is the chance of you crossing the path of an opportunistic predator at some point in your life? It's probable. It's very probable. Especially
we probably all have at some point, and just luckily it never escalated to that situation.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I talk to so many people with close calls all the time, but their intuition went off and they got out of the situation. Right. And yeah, it's unfortunate, but you'd like to think that you'll never get cancer or you'll never lose your job or, tornado won't hit your house or whatever, but you need to prepare for those things. You need to prepare. And actually you come out on top when you do prepare for those things.
So the one video I watched before I came on with you was the first one on YouTube. I looked up, obviously, and I did subscribe. And the first video was kind of what you said, someone not paying attention. It was a woman walking out of, I guess, a store, head down on her phone.
Right.
Someone, as you said, watching her from their own car, open their trunk as if they were getting something out of their trunk, grabbed her from behind, covered her mouth, threw her in the trunk. As you said, the situation, obviously yours was a, dramatization, but very realistic. The entire
Right.
thing probably took 4 to 5 seconds.
Yep.
A short enough time for no one else to see it.
Right.
And boom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that really, to me, you could stand up there all you want, and there's value to that. But when you add to it, which I'm sure you do in your presentations, a video of it, it really hits home hard.
It does. Emotional storytelling,
Yeah.
right? And
Mhm.
a video, when you see it, you hear it, it's you're watching it play out in real life. I created that video because there was a young girl that was taken from a mall at 3:30 in the afternoon here in
Yeah.
North Dakota. She was 21 years old, and he took her quickly. She was on her phone, and she was murdered in a terrible story. And so I actually did that video kind of in her honor, but to show what can happen to people so quickly,
Right.
but then also to show how to never have that happen to you, right? So
Yeah. And again, that was a perfect example where, because the person was on their cell phone, A, they're not looking around to identify something.
right,
B, they're walking slower because you're texting. You're not going to walk as swiftly as if you're looking down. So there
yeah,
were a lot of things there where that extra 3 or 4 seconds to your car could have made a difference. You
right,
seeing someone sitting in the next car, why is that guy sitting in their car? Maybe you decide to go back in.
right.
Yeah. And unfortunately, distraction just kind of, in so many ways, made that situation worse.
Right. And if you're not paying attention, you will likely freeze because you can't see everything around you. You're not seeing all the different pieces. And especially if somebody has a knife, and back when Drew Shadeen was taken, they used to say, go to a different location. That was a long time ago. Now you don't go to another location. If somebody comes up to you with a gun or a knife, you just run and scream. If they wanted to murder you, they would do it right there. They're
Right.
not, the minute you're running and screaming and getting away, they're running the
They're
other
running
way.
the other way.
Right. So that's another thing that's really important for a lot of people to know.
Because, and again, I'm a little naive to this subject. Like, obviously, it's not my area of expertise like yours. But I remember back in the day, it was for the girls. It was the keychain with the mace.
Yeah.
And it was simply, when you walk around, take that, hold it in your hand,
Right.
and if you needed the mace, obviously that's not a bad idea. But all these other things can hopefully prevent that to ever happening. And what I really like about what you've said is you've kind of taken this from a few different angles. Your first angle, and correct me if I'm saying anything wrong, the first
Right.
angle is, let's try and put you in the best position so nothing happens.
Correct. Yep.
Because you're aware. B, if you sense something is happening, respond. C, if in fact you have been diligent or you haven't been diligent and you miss the signs and you're put in a situation, all right, your answer isn't, well, you should have listened to me on A and B. It's, okay, you're in C.
Right.
What can we try and do to mitigate the situation you're in? So I like it that you're not just addressing the one aspect. Let's face it, I'm going to guess if I'm learning martial arts, I'm learning how to defend myself. That's
Right.
probably not talking a lot about the awareness aspects. That's kind of that's helping with the after. You're helping with the before,
right,
the during, and maybe you're even discussing a little bit of the after. If you get away, what do you do? So you're hitting it from all different angles, which I think is amazing.
Right. Thank you. And so also, if you can't get away, find a car, run around a car as a barrier, go into a store. If you can't do any of those things and somebody's approaching you and you already have your hands up with your palms out, this is a universal sign for stop, right? They don't have to speak English. You blade your body. Okay. If you blade your body, it's strong body language. It looks like you've had training. You can either run quicker, you can kick. If somebody runs at you and pushes you, you're not going to fall back as easily. If somebody's running at you, you move from side to side. It takes away like 60% of the blow, but you put your hands up, say, stop, I can't help you. It's your command presence, right? They know then that you've probably had some training and you're going to be a fighter. And a lot of these criminals, they've admitted, and all this research, that they don't want a fighter. They want an easy person to rob from. So,
and I imagine you doing this also. I'm sorry to cut you off. If I'm doing this for someone in front of you, maybe someone sees that.
Right. Exactly. And it's not an aggressive, behavior. You're not, your fists aren't closed or
Right.
anything like that, but you can block if your forearms are very strong. You can block if they try to punch you, or you can just quickly move away. But the other thing is that we do talk about safety products to have on you, because
Mhm.
two is one and one is none. So what is the best thing to carry on you? So I endorse something called Repulse. It's a chemical spray, and it's better than pepper gel because it causes involuntary eye closure. Pepper gel, sometimes you can fight through it, especially if they're on drugs. Sometimes they can keep their eyes open. But this chemical spray is now in hospitals. They're using it in hospitals. There's no blowback. If I would use it, it doesn't come back at me, so I don't get it.
Mhm.
They literally cannot open their eyes. There's the best safety app that I also endorse is Cover. It has all of the safety features that you could ever need on that, because sometimes you can fight for yourself, but you can push the panic button, and now they know somebody can come to your rescue at some point, right? Because you
Mhm.
also need that, especially if you're in some remote location. You can't do it on your own for how long, right?
Yeah.
So there's different things. There's flashlights that can temporarily blind an attacker. So use the flashlight just to temporarily blind somebody.
Right.
And then also the last thing is you're fighting for your life, fingers in the eyes.
Yeah.
It's hard to talk about, but palm strike somebody right in the nose, that hurts really bad, and their eyes water just
Yeah.
enough. Kick somebody in the knees or punch them in the solar plexus. So the best fight is the one you're never in. That's what our motto is.
Yeah, of course.
But
But if you're in the
but
situation,
if you have to, so we're also realistic, because we know that bad guys are bad guys, and they're not, sometimes they won't stand down if they want.
yeah. But
Want to
here's
do
the
something.
problem, and I'm sure this is something you've come across 1,000 times. Those products you mentioned, all wonderful.
Right.
The girl in that video leaving Target at 2 o'clock in the afternoon
Hmm.
on a sunny day isn't, for the most part, going to take that out. At 9 o'clock at night, leaving Target, they're more inclined to. But people's mindset, and this is going to be obviously a struggle as you're educating people, because obviously
Yep.
there is no difference.
Right.
But at 2 o'clock, even if I have a couple of bags from Target, I don't need to go into my purse and take this out and hold it to be ready, because my hands are full anyway, and it's daylight. A lot of those things only work
Right.
if I have it in position to do it.
Exactly. Because honestly, well, after they take our training, they will have their bags in one hand, and they
Yeah.
will, if they're nervous, they will have their chemical spray or their flashlight or
Yeah.
whatever in their pocket. It can't be at the bottom of their purse, because when you get afraid, your fine motor skills just go. You can't even really dial 911
Yeah.
very quickly, and you know how long it takes to call and actually somebody to answer, and so that's a very good point. And it doesn't matter what time of day. Bad things don't
Right.
just happen at 2 a.m. in a dark
Yeah.
alley. And I like people to know that. Criminals
Is
are
there a
smart.
product that exists? And if there's not, I'm going to give you a good idea for your business, but I'm sure it exists. So in that, and the reason I'm asking this is your video showed one other key thing.
Okay.
Because when I watched your video and she's thrown into the trunk and the door closes, I'm thinking to myself, listen, you were just on your cell phone, text someone to track you. But then your camera panned away from her and her cell phone was on the ground by her car.
Right.
So my initial reaction was like, come on, lady, use your phone. Obviously she couldn't, it fell. Is there something that exists where a young woman, if her phone was grabbed, can have something in her pocket? They
Yes.
have those air tags now where I can put it on something, or luggage. If I lose it, they can track it. I'm sure there's something as a safety tool that someone can keep in their pocket, and that a attacker might not even think twice about, where
Right. So
they hit a button. If they're throwing in the trunk, hit a button, and then suddenly they're being tracked.
yes, that's a good point. So Cover does have jewelry. So, and even if their phone is, she could push her, brooch or her like something
Kind of
around
like a
her,
life alert for older people, kind of like.
something around her wrist, and the phone can be like 20 feet away, and nobody would even guess that this jewelry
Right.
is calling for help. But that's actually that's a really good point, though. Could they just put an air tag or something in their pocket that shows their location? You know what I mean? Because then
And
that
a
way,
way to notify someone that you need to know my location. Because it's got to be two-pronged. me having
Right.
an air tag, but no one knows to look for me now. Now, maybe in 3 hours when I don't answer my phone, someone looks at me, but that could be way too late. But
Exactly.
is there
Exactly.
something where if God forbid I'm put in a situation or I'm thrown in a car, a van or whatever,
Right.
and the guy takes my phone, because let's face it, people are going to take your phone, that you could somehow have something that you could kind of immediately have yourself tracked.
Right. And so if they push the jewelry close enough where it's, 20 feet, might be a little bit farther away from their phone, if they push it right away, that would track them. That
Right.
would
But
track
again,
them.
realistically,
Yeah,
what if you're more than 20 feet away? I mean,
exactly.
someone
So,
grabs you and drags you 100 yards away.
well, Mike, now you just came up with an invention.
I
So,
know.
okay, nice.
You work on that because you have
Okay.
more people to get it across to.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but as we're talking, and like I said, your video accomplished its goal with me because it made me think, which I think is
Right.
ultimately your objective. And
It's all about
I'm like yelling at this actress on my screen, like, dude, use your phone. And then until I saw she never phone, now I'm like, all right, well, now you're stuck.
right.
Yeah.
And this stuff is all, thinking outside of the box, doing
Mhm.
real world stuff, and now what could actually save her, right?
Yeah.
So,
Because at that point, you're right. You're just in survival mode. So there's not much you could do when you're locked in a trunk or locked in the back of a van or things like that. There's nothing you
correct.
could do.
Right.
You almost have to wait for them to come back for you
Right.
and then get ready to try and attack. There's nothing else you can't get out of these situations.
No, true.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how do you see your business evolving over the next few years? Is it just going to try and just get yourself more out there? Is there other things you'd like to do that you haven't really done yet? Like how,
Partnering with some big companies that I've chosen to partner with. So that'll be coming out soon. There are a lot of safety products out there that are not good safety products, that they're not realistic, And so I always have different companies coming after me trying to endorse it, but I will only endorse what I will carry on me or have my daughters
Sure.
carry.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm strategically partnering with some really big companies. I'm developing. My love is the content. I used to be, like I said earlier, a former ICU nurse, and those
Yeah.
are really good people or healthcare workers. And now, the incidents are off the charts. Everybody's quitting. So the big thing right now is developing a real world personal safety training for within the hospital. And I want to keep on developing more videos to, just to put out there to save people from either accidents or criminal incidents, because lack of situational awareness is the number 4 cause of death. So it used to be number 3 before COVID, but if you're just looking at your phone and you're driving, right, that's an accident. Now people are dying, or you're falling down the stairs. It doesn't necessarily mean that a criminal is going to get you. It means you're not paying attention and you could really hurt yourself. And
Right.
so,
Yeah.
and
Awareness,
I
just
also,
in general.
yeah,
Listen,
and
if you could promote awareness in general, not just from what you're doing, but if you
right,
could get people to be aware to stop texting when they're driving or not texting, as you said,
yeah,
I'm not going to lie to you. I walk a lot, and sometimes I'll be on my phone and I've walked into a low branch. I've scraped my
yeah,
face because, it's hanging over the sidewalk and I'm looking down. I've walked into it. It's just
right,
stupid. No crime. No one was hurt besides a little scratch, but yeah, it was stupid. And
right.
it happened because of my own fault and I wasn't aware.
Or what about being a good Samaritan anymore, right? Because I'm paying attention, I noticed that this woman who's pregnant and has a little kid in her arm, she can't open the door. So now I'm running to open the door. Or there's an old man that has fallen in the parking lot and nobody sees them because they're on their phone. So now I'm helping this old man up off the ice.
Yeah.
Right? It's about being a good Samaritan as well.
Yeah,
And
sure.
it's kind of embarrassing that we have to teach this nowadays. Our ancestors always paid attention.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. But right now, our ancestors didn't nearly have the distractions.
Exactly.
I mean, and I'm the culprit of it too now. Back in the day, you'd go to a doctor's office and you didn't have phones. And if you had to wait a half hour, you'd wait a half hour. And maybe there was a magazine you could flip through.
Right.
And if there wasn't, you just sat there.
Right. And you
Well,
notice
now forget the magazines because I'm going to go on to any one of my 5 social media platforms. I'll go on YouTube, watch some videos. I'll go to, I can entertain myself. Hell, take an hour. I don't care. I'm having a good time in your waiting room because, these things can entertain you 24/7.
Right. And I always like to teach my students that you are not in control of your environment. If you're in a store, you can't control who's coming in that store, right? But you can control it to your awareness. Are you distracted or not? You can tell
Yeah.
if now this guy that looks like he's on drugs just walked in and he's got really bad body language. I mean,
Yeah.
he looks like he's just going to hit somebody, or
Yeah.
now you can get away from that guy. It's your choice to get out of the store or leave the store.
Right.
So there's so much you can do just by being aware.
My last question, I meant to ask you before because I have a family of educators. Have you done anything with, when I say educators, I'm talking like the elementary school level type things. And
Okay.
unfortunately, there's been, as you know, what's happened in the past 10 years, with Sandy Hook, Parkland, which was a little older, but still nevertheless a school. Have you
Right.
done any work with any schools at all in terms of that? I mean, in those situations, some of them, there really wasn't anything that could have been done in advance in the sense of, if you think about Sandy Hook, a guy just came in shooting. I mean, there wasn't like, whereas the other one, he kind of meshed in with the crowd. He was a student, and the awareness there might have been the days leading up to it kind of thing. So it might not be someone's going to shoot in 5 minutes, but it's, looking at signs of someone who might have something going on in his head that, is that part of what you've done, or is that something you'd like to get involved with?
I've done a little bit of the active shooter scenario, and it's really the front desk people. They have to be paying attention, and they're usually coming from outside the building somehow, and so they just have to understand, how do people walk when they have a weapon on them? They have a weird gait, and you can tell that they're walking kind of funny because they're guarding their weapon.
Yeah.
Does your intuition go off? Then what's your next step? Who are you going to call? How are you going to try to take this person down?
Right.
But really, unfortunately for the students, they're too young. They usually get the doors locked. I believe in having door jams, because sometimes you can still shoot the door down, but if you put a door jam, an industrial door jam, in the middle of that door, that's not coming down. But the big thing is to train those students to be quiet. A lot of times shooters don't know where people are, but they hear kids crying, or they hear, like in a restroom or something, they might be crying. And the big thing is to be quiet wherever your location is. Get out of the building if you can. Break windows if you're on the first floor. And I also think they should have glass breaks where they can just break the window. They can always, and jump out the window on the first floor. They can always replace those windows.
Oh, yeah. At that point, you don't care about replacing a window. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, there's a lot that needs to be done with school shootings. I mean, unfortunately, our children are terrified when they go to school. They think that there might be a school shooter. I think it's big to have police officers, somebody who is armed in that school. I mean, Israel did it for many years. They had no shootings.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what you're doing in North Dakota now. My wife's an elementary school principal. So
okay.
Ever since, last several years now, she does have an armed guard, and
okay, nice.
Most districts now do have armed guards and a much more difficult security protocol to enter. Where when my daughter was in first grade at elementary school, parents signed up to do front desk sign-in. So like I'd have a shift. Oh, what are you here for? I'm here for a bake sale. Okay, Mrs. Jones, come on in, kind of thing. Now they have to call ahead. You got to show your ID. A lot of the schools now have machines where you got to put in your license and all that kind of stuff. But the key is there is an armed guard now, at least in this area, in all schools.
Right. And the big thing is the students know, just like other shootings, they know what stores to go in where there's no armed guard. They're going to go into the easiest stores, but they're not going to go into any store or school that has an armed guard, because criminals are smart.
Right. No, exactly. And they're smart enough where they've done their homework, presumably. So they're going to, whether you said they're going to go to a store. I'm going to go to the store without a security guard. I'm going to go to a store that's closest to a door. Yep. I'm not going to rob a store in the middle of the mall. When I got to first rob it, then I got to run 1,000 feet. I'm going to try and find an easy target right by a door.
Right. And just one more quick tip, whenever you're out in public, know where all your exits are.
Yes.
If you're at a concert and there's shooting, go over the stage. There are no rules. When you're at a restaurant, go out the kitchen. In a mall, go out some store's back door. So most people, when they are in a shooting, they freeze. They go out the exit that they came in, because they are not thinking. They're just going straight out the exit.
They want to get back to their car. Yeah.
That's called the fatal funnel. Just like that shooting in Las Vegas. The fatal funnel happened there because everybody panicked. They ran out where they came in, and now they're all getting shot. So don't go out that same exit. Find different exits. It's such a great strategy. You're walking and you're like, oh, I could exit here. I could exit in this restaurant over there. But don't wait until something's happening and you're panicked and you can't look for an exit. Just know where it's at.
Interesting. Well, this is great stuff. So please tell the listeners how they can kind of follow you or, your videos and so forth. So kind of cover all the social media platforms for me.
Yeah. So if they just go to prettyloaded.org and they can follow all of our platforms there. YouTube is our biggest platform, but you can find all of our links right there on our website. If they want to get a hold of me or any of my affiliates, I have a few affiliates around the nation that are amazing. And if they need training, we have live training, webinar training, we have online training. If they want to get a hold of me, it's empowered@prettyloaded.org.
Awesome. Well, listen, Beth, I appreciate the time. This is really, educational, both for me. Like I said, I have a wife, 2 daughters, so definitely stuff to discuss, and so forth. And I really appreciate the time you took to join us today.
Thank you, Mike, so much for having me.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Adeptus On-Air. If you like this episode, please subscribe and leave a review. The views and opinions by the podcast speakers and guests are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of Adeptus. This podcast provides general information only and is not intended to constitute advice.